Welcome to What Drives You. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, how to keep issues from dividing us. My perspective is that we are the most divided culture ever right now. Every issue is a trigger for everyone, and you're required to stand on one side or the other, or be deemed negligent or ignorant or evil. And if someone aligns with a differing side or perspective, you've got to distance yourself from them. To me, it feels like we've fallen into the most strict religious culture ever. Everyone has their set of beliefs according to the religion of their perspective. And if you believe differently, you're judged and sentenced to be crucified. I think it's toxic and poisoning our society. So a book came across my desk from someone I would not normally have on my show. But in doing so, I felt like it beautifully represented the whole point here. Why is it a threat to sit and have a discussion with someone who may have differing values and perspectives, who lives a different lifestyle? Well, my guest is Kat Timpf. Kat is a writer, comedian, and a libertarian commenter. She's currently the co-panelist of Gutfeld. It's on Fox News weeknights at 10 p.m., and she's a Fox News analyst as well. She's the author of a New York Times bestselling book, You Can't Joke About That, Why Everything is Funny, Nothing is Sacred, and We're All in This Together. She has a national comedy tour that's been sold out. Well, she's got a new book, though. That's my muse here. And the title is I Used to Like You Until ... How Binary Thinking Divides Us. Kat's, again, her life and her lifestyle couldn't be further from my own, but I found her views on cultural division are very similar. And I was honored to sit and have this discussion with her. I think there's a lot for us all to learn. When I'm not having these discussions about human potential, I'm working directly with people on their human potential. You can find me at kevinmiller.co. Here are a few sponsors. They help make the show possible. Then drive with me and Kat Timpf as we talk about how to keep these issues from dividing us and see what we can learn for ourselves today.
Kat, I had the book come across the desk, and I don't have a whole lot of books with naked people on the front cover.
Yeah.
And that caught my attention. And your topic and where you are in the marketplace, in the culture, amongst it, is really it's outside of my norm, which I felt as I got in the book is kind of your point. And when it's outside of your norm, can you handle it? So I'm kind of here because I want to handle it better and learn. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind the cover being nude and I'm covered in hate mail on the cover is this idea of vulnerability, even in the face of overwhelming hatred. And as somebody who's politically independent, who works at Fox News, I get it from both sides. I get it from the viewers here. Whenever I don't share views with the majority of the viewership on an issue, which happens. And then sometimes I'll get it from people on the other side, just because I work here in the first place. So I think that put me in the unique position to write a book like this.
Okay, well, on that, this is a topic that's been really at the forefront for me, and I felt like you brought it to light. And part of my question is, as a culture, why are we so threatened? Why are we so sensitive? And what I want to come down to, and I'm saying I'm in it, because it looks like this national insecurity that we would be so volatile, and it has me looking at why have we gotten to that place?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for it. I get into a lot of them in the book. One thing that I found was interesting was there's a study that shows that moral altruism is more often rooted in self-interest.
I read that in your book.
Than moral outrage, rather. Let me repeat that. Moral outrage is more often rooted in self-interest than it is in altruism. Where so that if you feel guilt over not being able to solve a problem, or you feel powerless over not being able to solve a problem, or guilt about a problem in general, you're more likely to direct the outrage about the problem to a third-party target, and then you feel better when you do. I think it can be really difficult for people to give that up. I mean, if you think about it, it's really hard for people to say, oh, like I'm a good person just because I'm not on the other side. That's a hard thing to give up. You have this moral superiority over people without really having to do much of anything at all. It's a lot easier and to feel that way than it is to actually confront the fact that that's not true, and that if you want to do something to solve a problem, you're actually going to have to maybe do something. Um, so that can be hard for people to give up.
Well, I mean, coming back to your title of your book on binary thinking. I mean, really, as I read this and looked to talking to you, I thought I want to say I'm a reformed binary thinker, but I'd have to say, to be honest, I'm reforming. I think it's continual for me, having coming from a really staunch religious background in the Bible Belt. And I mean, everything was absolute truth. And if you didn't agree, you were wrong. Not only that, you were actually going to hell. Right. That's my coming out of that. It's a big jump. It's a big road. It's very threatening. And in the middle of that, and I look back at my, what did you call it? Moral outrage, and wonder, I don't think I took much responsibility in mine. It was so easy to just stay in my spot and feel confident in it. It kind of sickens me to remember that, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book about religion. I was also raised very Catholic, and have, I'm no longer religious at all. But I think it's easier to view the world that way. I always say binary thinking is often the enemy of critical thinking, because once you pick a side or a lens to view the world through, all the thinking has already been done for you. You don't have to think critically about each issue. You just go with whatever your side says, and you just kind of call it a day.
Well,
I think that's another reason that people are motivated by this sort of binary thinking.
Well, and I look at that. Let's pick on religion, which I separate personally outside of spirituality, but just to look at religion. And yeah, we built it on that. I didn't question it. I mean, I just didn't. You weren't supposed to. To question it was wrong. I mean, that was blasphemy, really, to question it even. And it was so easy. At the time, it felt easy. I look back on it, it was easy to be certain, to be just, it's done. I don't have to think about it. And yet, even religion, I mean, going back to the Bible, it doesn't line up. It doesn't line up to just be done with the concept, with the issue, and never question it and engage with someone else about it.
Well, I think engaging with others who are different from you is really one of the main answers here. Because I have a lot of respect for religious people. In many ways, I'm jealous of religious people because I feel like I'd be happier if I was religious. I have a lot of close friends who are very religious, and they are not these stereotypical, judgmental people that you might think that they are. And research that I write about in the book, too, also shows that both atheists and by and large, obviously, not everyone, but by and large, both atheists and Christians believe that they're superior to the other group in all these various ways, but then they actually are wrong. I mean, there's so much research in the book about how often we are wrong about each other when we assume things about each other. And they found that the people who don't fall for these inaccurate assumptions are people who actually get to know people from different religions or with or without religious beliefs throughout their lives. And so that's the answer, I think. And also leading with what you have in common instead of what you have different.
Well, talking on that superiority aspect, I mean, as I look at that, I still, again, and I'm going to continue saying we and me and owning it, because this is what I've come from so harshly. That superior aspect to me now rings to, again, insecurity. I mean, it's not something that we would find with somebody, I think, who is secure. If you're really secure in what you believe, it feels like, wouldn't you be more open to putting it on the table and say, yeah, man, tell me your side? To me, it reeks of, again, insecurity. And I look at it and go, it just doesn't make sense. Obviously, it's not working. That's why you wrote like you said, I had to write a whole book about this. It's not working.
Yeah.
And you're awash in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, it applies to politics too, where there are these huge assumptions about other people. And across demographics, research shows there's a so-called perception gap between the parties, where people in one party hugely overestimate how many people in the other party have these so-called extreme views. So a lot of the times people will say, I can't be friends with a, Democrat, or I can't be friends with a Trump supporter because of blah, 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 blah. And then the blah, 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 blah that they've listed isn't even accurate or based in reality on largely when we're talking about these people. So we end up hating each other. I'm not saying there's never a reason to cut someone out of your life, because of course there is. It's very important to have boundaries. But we're hating each other for reasons that aren't even real.
On that, why is it that we seem to, again, you wrote a book about it because it feels like it just continues to escalate, that as I was reading even this morning, it feels like anything, any topic, anything is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything is everything. And is it just feel efficient? Do people, I can look at that. I mean, I remember doing a show a couple years ago. It was kind of during the Black Lives Matter aspect with a black guy. And he said, stereotyping, it's efficient. It is efficient. I mean, you can go faster to actually stop and understand the person and not stereotype them. It takes more time. And a lot of us don't want to take the time. So to come forward and not stereotype, you gotta let some of the efficiencies go. And I wonder if we've gotten into that as well. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's also human, I think, to notice patterns, draw connections, to have preconceived notions based on your past experiences. All of that is human. But I think it's also important to think about that's not zero sum. We lose a lot when we do. We limit our ability, as I mentioned already, to think critically. We also limit our ability to think creatively. I think that I'm very proud of the fact, actually, that at my stand-up shows, I've had both liberals and conservatives walk out of my show because they were offended by a joke, specifically because they were offended by something that I said. And that I've offended both makes me feel like I'm doing something right. I think that when you are limiting yourself to a certain lens, then you're also limiting your ability to think creatively. You have to just actually, you have to try. Because I also begin the book by calling myself out. Everybody's done it.
Yeah.
Everybody's, seen something about somebody and use that to assume something about the person. But we're wrong a lot when we do that. So it does take effort to actually be able to go against our conditioning in a way, but it's worth it. And this book is really kind of a guide for how to do that, and also an explainer for why it's worth it.
The stories, you have so many of you being at some social event and finding out that there are people who actually like you or what you do and your commentary, whatever, but they don't want to let the association be known.
Right.
Well, and you even said a minute ago, people are offended walking out of your show. I thought, well, can you be offended?
It's really hard to offend me because I look, it's not that I'm a sensitive person. And I think that I get my feelings hurt. And I definitely am somebody who doesn't hesitate to say when someone hurts my feelings. To me, that's so much different. And I wrote a whole other book. My first book is about comedy and using laughter to help you get through trauma and that kind of thing, and free speech. But I think there's a huge difference between saying, okay, so this thing hurt my feelings, or okay, this thing I disagree with, and making the jump of, therefore we're throwing away the whole person.
Yeah.
Which I think there's this huge, that's the difference. It's not that you're not allowed to disagree, or that you're even not allowed to think somebody did something wrong, or that you're even not allowed to think that people should be held accountable for things that they've done wrong. But we've moved beyond, I think, accountability for actions or accountability for words, and into accountability for being, where it's like once you say something wrong or do something wrong, then they'll throw the whole person away. And then also, just in terms of, even if it's not something wrong, maybe it's just an assumption. If someone says this one thing, this must mean that they believe this whole other host of things, which is just not the case. We're all unique, nuanced individuals. Issues are often nuanced and complex, I always say, and then people always are. Just because someone believes one thing about one issue doesn't mean that they're going to be down the line with all those other issues that you might assume. And really what it comes down to is viewing people with curiosity. You have to be curious about other people. I'm very curious about other people. And I've been so lucky to have so many relationships with people that are different from me. And I've learned so much from people. And I can't imagine my life without all these relationships. And I wouldn't have these relationships if I wouldn't have been curious myself about people.
Let me ask you about a couple issues then, just to help discuss the point that you're making here, that I'm in agreement with you on. I feel very isolated. I'm a privileged 6 foot tall white American male. I'm at the height of privilege, and I live up in the mountains. I'm in a bubble, and I look at you. You're amongst this. You're within it every single day. So these issues, I have perspectives on, but I can't say that I've experienced them all. Like, let's take abortion. I mean, that's one that's so volatile, especially coming from the religious, background. And yet I want to look at it and go, okay, if I really, and there's a lot of people who just don't care. I think that's just not a big deal for them. They've never dealt with it, whatever. Then you got these people who dramatically care about it. And if I look at those, I want to take those and go, to me, that's people who both really care about the sanctity of life. Different, they're coming at it from a different perspective, maybe, but at the core, I'd say, man, you guys both on both sides, you really care about life. That's a common value. Is that fair, or is that going too far?
Well, I write repeatedly again in my book about how we should focus on what we have in common first instead of where we're different. And I talk about in the book being in the green room where there's these two people. One of them is a talking head that's a Democrat, like very famously Democrat talking head. The other one is a equally, well-known Republican talking head. And they're talking about, there had been a school shooting recently, and they're talking about how scary it is to have young children in school during a time when there's so many shootings. And the Democrat was saying that she felt very lucky that she lived in a very liberal area, in a liberal neighborhood where people didn't really have guns. And then the Republican was talking about how she had pulled her daughter out of school to go to a school where there's armed guards and there's more security. And neither of them argued with the other one about the approach that they had taken or what they felt made them feel better, but they bonded over the shared fear instead. So I think, and that's obviously a very contentious issue. So I think that being able to see that, but compare that to the way that we hear it talked about a lot, where people will say, and each side does this about the other side in various ways. But I have a whole chapter called "Think of the Children" in the book because it's such a commonly used argument, where people will say Republicans just don't give a shit if kids die, which, I mean, on its face, that's ridiculous. On its face, you have to be a truly sociopathic, horrific, just person to, even some of the worst people out there will get upset about a child dying.
Yeah.
So you can't really believe that the person that you're talking to really just doesn't give a shit that kids die. But we behave so often in our conversations as if they do. And that's another thing that I think is hard to give up. It's hard to give up the fact that, hey, maybe you're just somebody with a different view on policy. You have a different view about what might solve this problem, but you agree on the problem. And that's a lot harder than saying, like, I'm a warrior for kids and you don't give a shit about kids. That can be hard to give up that sort of moral high ground. So I think that regardless of the issue, regardless of how contentious the issue is, I think focusing on what we have in common rather than where we're different is a huge way into having those conversations be less volatile.
You said this to a degree, I think, in the book. I wrote something right around this, but I encountered after this last election people who took the stance of, if they did not feel support, let's just to take aim, from Trump on an issue, and if you didn't vote against Trump, then you were by proxy against their rights, kind of like that. You hate children. You are totally against their rights. And I feel like it's a no-win if you take that stance, because you can say that on both sides, but then you also, you do have to make a decision and you do vote, and there's going to be pros and cons. And you're going to say, yeah, I'm bummed that I voted for X and it's going to maybe not help this area, but it's going to help this one. And that one's more important to my life. Can you come to a place of, do you think we should be able to come to a place and be okay, even if it's significant to our life?
Especially because it's people will be living in different realities, essentially, where there's people who voted for Trump who are gay, people who voted for Trump who are women, people who voted for Trump who are black, and people, just using gay as an example, will say, people who are against Trump will say, what about Project 2025? And then people who are voting for Trump, I've never heard them say, yes, I'm voting for Trump because I don't like gay people. I mean, it's more like, oh, well, Trump has said that he doesn't support that. That's not his plan. So it's just getting to actually know and meet people and talk to them rather than just blindly accepting what you've been told about an entire swath of people is the way to go. Because it's just not the case that there's millions and millions and millions of people who all hate gay people and are all racist and are all it's not, and I'm not saying those things don't exist. Homophobia exists, sexism exists, transphobia exists. Of course those things exist, but if you actually get to know people, try I know a lot of people who are Trump supporters. I myself am not. I'm not. I have a nuanced view of, I'm a Republican. I have a nuanced view of Trump. I have a nuanced view of every politician out there, but probably the most MAGA guy that I know actually is a gay first generation Mexican and Iranian immigrant, who I know personally, is a close friend of mine. People would be shocked to hear that. So he doesn't hate himself. He just has different views about what Trump actually wants to do than some of the people who are freaking out have. So the only way, sadly, is also the hardest way, which is getting to actually know people who are different from you.
When on that, I mean, you come down to voting. I mean, we're coming down to, it feels like that's what makes it difficult too, because we have some of these issues that aren't just, I wish we could come to them subjectively, case by case. And yet, to some degree, then I feel like that would be best case scenario. We would address everything case by case and not have to have a law about it that is black and white, all or nothing. And yet we live in a culture that if I was leading it, I don't know how to not have laws as well. And to some degree, it feels like it's a necessary evil to have the law, but it's disappointing because, yeah, it's not going to be, it doesn't, I don't know. I want to say it's not for complete fairness. I mean, it can't be. Thoughts?
I mean, I'm extremely live and let live politically and also in my personal life. I don't judge people for decisions they make in their personal life. I don't get scandalized by things really ever. And that's why I am a small government person in the true sense of the word, because I think there's so much focus on the people that we have in power and not the amount of power that those positions have.
Yeah.
Where if the president didn't have so much power and the government didn't have so much power, we wouldn't have people freaking out so much about who was going to be in these different offices. So yeah, because I'm extremely, I am somebody who has zero understanding. I can't even comprehend of how anyone could care about another person's personal choice that has no effect on your life.
That I'm with you now. But I came from that it was, why is that offensive? And even here, help me with this. And this has been, let's just play with health and wellness, which should be fairly benign. But even there, I spent so much of my time looking at, I mean, I was a pro athlete, what helps us function the best. And I took that. And as a father, I'm leading my kids that way. We actually eat vegetables. There's not an option not to like vegetables and not eat them. You don't have to eat, but if you're eating, you're gonna eat vegetables, and all my kids ate vegetables. And I'm looking for what gives us the most life, the best life. I mean, I continually pursue that. And yet then to be there and I'd watch my kids even, I mean, I'm sure I had an effect on them, but I'd see them to judge somebody else then. Oh, I went to so-and-so and Susie doesn't even eat vegetables. Shame on her. And it hit me that how do you share things that you think are helpful, good, without that feeling of, or being judgmental, or that propensity to then, we're back to superiority, aren't we? Why does that? come
I think you
in.
can. I think you just also have this baseline understanding of you don't know what's going on in another person's life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you approach somebody, just because you have not you take not eating vegetables, that's one piece of information you have about the person. You don't know
Yeah.
why. You don't know. You know, it's like not letting any one piece of information about a person color your entire view of that person. Except for, of course, in like extreme examples. I think if someone's like a serial killer, then that can
Fair. There are some lines
that can be a
there.
person who can be canceled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to say that because when we get into these topics, I'll come up to like pedophilia. I don't
Right.
think we're going to cross that line.
Right, exactly.
I've been not struggling. I have been pondering for a while now, again, coming out of this religious background, even the aspect of beliefs and how we're so tied to them. I had a guy, Andy Norman, on the show. He wrote a book called Mental Immunity, and specifically to talk about beliefs. And he just cited the danger in the belief when we take it. And it's not just something that we're kind of benignly looking at and going, gosh, what seems to be the most helpful and the most constructive? But when we take that belief and then tie it to our identity, he said, that's when we go south. And it feels like when I look at social media and even look at the media headlines, it looks like we're taking our beliefs, making them conclusive, tying them to our identities. And then we're just fighting to win a fight and not for what may be best and most helpful, productive.
Yeah, I think that can definitely be the case with it's definitely gets tied to people's identity. Absolutely. You have to be open.
Associations you talk about like that, going back to somebody saying, hey, I really appreciate telling a friend, I at a party, appreciate, what Kat does. I like her stuff, but just, don't tell anybody I said that.
Yeah.
That it's this association aspect. And again, I look at why we seem to be, what you associate with is what you stand for. So what you buy, what you watch, what you read, what you tune into seems to say so much about that. So yeah, if I like that, having you on the show, I will have some people who will say, well, that association that's not cool. I'm not okay with that. And why do we associate so much with a thing?
Well, I get that all the time, and it's very frustrating, especially because Fox isn't really an idea in itself. It's a platform for which to share ideas. And, why I've never really fully understood it, why people are like that. Cause it's like, okay, if you didn't, first of all, as someone who is here and works here, I know that there's people on the air who have different viewpoints than just the overarching, pro-Trump Republican. I also know that this building is filled with people who aren't on the air, producers, makeup artists, camera operators, a hairstylist, so on and so forth, all of various backgrounds, all of various beliefs. And it's just the overarching view of what this place is. As somebody who's here every day, I know that it's not accurate. But also, I am someone who is on air sharing views that are sometimes different. I share this view, this topic of this book about how we should not cut people out for believing differently. You should not cut people out. And I'm doing that on the other side often here. Like, just because someone's a Democrat, that doesn't mean they're a horrible person, or just because, and why should I not be here saying those things? Isn't it better? I mean, if you're one of these people that complains, oh, my grandparents have on Fox News all day, and then they would never hear another different point of view. So I don't, it's very frustrating to me because it's also just inaccurate. When you talk to me, or if you read my book and you see where I kind of fall on various issues, it's not what you would think if you just hear that, oh, this is someone who works at Fox News. But also, like, you're reading my book because I'm very public about this. I'm not pretending to be anything that I'm not, which it's tough because, it'd be easier if I did. That's what I don't understand is people just tell me, like, pick a side. It would be so much easier if I did. It would be so much more lucrative for me if I did. If I went all in and I went like full MAGA and I was like, it's not like it's a secret when I sit down to a segment what the vast majority of the people watching it want to hear me say. That's easy to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did that, I probably would sell more books. If I wrote like a super mega book for this audience, if I, well, I would sell out all my shows probably. But it would be way easier for me to just pick a side. Or if I even pick the other side, then I would have everyone on the other side on my team, instead of having people hate me one day from one side and then people hate me another day from another side, or then people saying, that I'm a fence sitter, which I'm not a fence sitter. I'm very strong in my beliefs. It's just they don't fall in line with any particular party or lens. They're just mine. And it- you know, it's people who get to know me or read my book or watch me, they would realize that.
I mean, you are, well, I'll ask you, is it fair to say, I mean, I don't know, part of why you do what you do, why you get up every day and engage and invest in the platform that you have and write a book like this, is you do have things that you care about and think are, I'm going to say, productive, constructive, I would even life-giving, that you care enough about to get out and talk about. So this isn't that you're saying anything goes, it doesn't matter. You do care, but you're mainly saying, but I'm not going to be disrespectful to somebody who doesn't align with that care. Fair?
No, and I really can't get behind that. That's why
Okay, tell me.
I really can't get behind if somebody says, I really feel passionate about this issue that's so much different than everybody who voted for so and so is blank. It's just, first of all, that's like just not true ever about anybody. And I think it's really tearing us apart, and we're really, we're missing out on all these relationships with people that could be fulfilling, but also we're missing out on opportunities to kind of collaborate with one another, when we have so many issues and problems in common.
What I was edging towards, though, is, I mean, you care about things,
Of course.
and you're fine to put effort behind those.
Hmm.
It's not that, because I think it could come off that where you're saying, okay, I'm not going to judge anyone. And it's not to say that you don't care about issues, but you're not going to be judgmental and shoot someone down who thinks differently. Doesn't mean that you don't have things that you don't care about and are going to support, though. I mean, you are going to make a decision.
Of course I have issues that I'm passionate about. I don't think that it's ever helpful to approach things that way. I think that it's human too sometimes, but I think that's often a failure.
When you look at this, I mean, I almost wanted to take the book and say at the end of it, there are things you're okay to agree to disagree, but you are going to hold on most to respecting and being respectful to someone else no matter what. Fair?
Well, I mean, I think that there's plenty of reasons to not respect people. I mean, there's plenty of reasons. It's not like there's people that have ever been in my life that are no longer in my life for various reasons. It's just that I'm not going to let sort of a different viewpoint or the way they voted. I often say that politics makes us fight with people we actually know on behalf of these politicians who don't even know we exist.
Yeah.
I think there's something so sad about that. Think about this. Think about Jimmy Carter's funeral. Think about Trump and Obama sitting there laughing together. The video, I don't know if you've seen it, of Trump and Obama sitting there laughing together. I don't know how you watch that. And as someone who maybe uninvited people from Thanksgiving over having voted for, let's just say, Trump. How do you watch that and feel like that was a good call for you to have made? Like they're laughing together. It's not that serious for them. They don't know you. They're never gonna know you, and now you're not gonna know your aunt, your uncle, your granddaughter. How like simping? I call it simping because it's like the simps in the comments, the pathetic guys or whatever. It's kind of I get the same energy from people who are so passionately defending some politician to the point where they are letting it interfere with the relationships of the people they know in real life. Politicians, they're not doing that.
I read that in your book and I thought back to, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but it was back in the Saturday morning cartoon era of life that I grew up in. And it was probably like a Bugs Bunny type thing or whatever. And it was Ralph Wolf and Sam Sheepdog. And they would have this wolf and this sheepdog come forward into the woods to a little clock in back when you used to clock in, and they would clock in together. Hey, good morning, Ralph. Hey, Sam, how are you? How's the kids? Good to see you. They'd clock in. Then they'd go in and spend the whole time beating the crap out of each other, which is what cartoon characters, did back then, and beheading each other and throwing each other off a cliff. And then the whistle would blow and they'd go back in all disheveled and clock back out. Hey, good night. Hope you have a good evening. And I loved that. It was almost like the honor among thieves kind of thing, that there's still a code. There's still a place that they don't go too far. And back to you with the opposing presidents laughing together, that they do that. And yet we don't do that as a culture. We would have snipers at the clock in thing to kill the person.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't add up.
Even with all the, Trump is Hitler. It's like, well, if he was Hitler, would you have peacefully handed over power to him? Probably not.
Yeah,
I would think. So, I mean, it's
your quote. You mentioned it a little bit ago. I'll read it. Start your book off. John Updike out of Rabbit Run, which I had not heard of. I went and looked at, and I actually ordered it yesterday.
It's my favorite. I mean, I love John Updike's novel.
I know the name. I just didn't know that book. So I ordered it. I'll have it today. But you start off and it said, hate suits him better than forgiveness. Immersed in hate, he doesn't have to do anything. He can be paralyzed, and the rigidity of hatred makes a kind of shelter for him. That it burdened me to read that, to know that I don't think that I hated. I don't think so, but I judged to such a degree, and that it was a shelter that didn't serve me well. It served me till it broke, which it feels like it has to.
And the reason I like John Updike, his stories, as I'm sure you'll find, they have been written before. Like, they're not very, like, the story themselves are not really, whoa, but it's more the individual sentences that he's written in these books that have stuck with me my entire life. There's countless of them. That is definitely one of them for that reason, because it really does stick with you and make you think, because hate is a shelter. You don't have to do anything. If the other side really is all evil, then, like, what is there for you to do? You're going to work with those pieces of shit? Of course you're not. You don't have to think about the way you yourself may have contributed to problems of the world, because you automatically have one up on half the country because of the way you voted.
Your title, I used to like you until ... What come to mind for you as the top highlights that would fit in there? I used to like you until blank. Because as I was thinking, until I find out you have a different value, a different belief, a different viewpoint. And yet then I still wanted, I'm asking you, because I was pondering it, but still, even that, why do I care? Why would I not like you until I find that? Which I guess, again, comes back to going, what is the threat? What is it in me that wants to not associate with you, to push you off because of that difference? How is it? And like you said a minute ago, and so often it's something that has no impact on my life whatsoever, but there's some aspect of humanity. I mean, we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
When you're trying to break something we've been doing a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess I've gotten it. I mean, a lot of it, I wrote 2 chapters about, like, the gender stuff in my book, right? Because I've always been someone who, like, I love drag. I just have an interest. Like, I like drag shows. I like RuPaul's Drag Race. And it's never been a controversial thing until all of a sudden the drag queen thing became controversial. So whenever I was saying the same stuff that I'd always said, I had people be like, she should be fired because she watches RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, that had not, and I talked about drag queens on the air before, and I never had that kind of reaction. So, like, some of the to me, that's just unbelievably silly. Like, it's really just silly. But to this person, it's not, because drag has become a symbol for, like, this and this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, I love drag queens. my last birthday before I was pregnant. Like we were at a drag run, love it. But I'm also like a Second Amendment gal. It's like you can't put me in a box. So it's like then the other person would be like, oh, she likes guns. She's probably homophobic. It's like, well, no, well, actually, I'm not even straight myself. Like it's there. But most people are just as nuanced as I am, really. If we're being honest with themselves, you give yourself the opportunity to think about these things.
Yeah, I live in it's not even a neighborhood, but a bunch of people who have land, and I'm the only one, and it's all a bunch of white people, fairly affluent, and I'm the only one without a gun. And I said it one time at a social thing, just kind of joking about that, and watched the reactions and thought, they just judged me.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to being judged, honestly, not that much. And I thought, they're just because I don't have a gun. And it was, they know nothing about me. And part of it's because I never had any exposure. It's just never come up. It'd be like saying, why don't you speak German? I just never had a reason to. I don't know. Guns were never part of my life. And yet the judgment, it was a new place for me. And yet I feel like you're kind of the crash test dummy of that. It seems like, because I love the story you had in the book of, I can't remember the details of, but you said that you were on, maybe it was on a show and you are on you're in one of your shows and you're kind of on this little rant and you hit this issue and this issue and this issue. And then you talked about the guy with the country music song. It was like, and that's the thing that hit people. They didn't mind of these and that, wow, you're getting to watch this and go, that hit a nerve. Wonder why.
Yes, Jason Aldean's the Try That in a Small Town. I made a joke about how I didn't know who he was because he looked like every guy ever to sit at the bar at a Buffalo Wild Wings, which people laughed in the audience. It was all good and whatever. But people were saying this song was pro-lynching for various reasons. I didn't agree with that. I'm also not really like a fan of new country music. And I was trying to think of something new and different to say. And people were like, okay, well, if she says that, she's an elitist, like blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, Jason Aldean's also not from a small town. He's the one who has like oceanfront property or, like he's the one who has, all this money. And same with all the politicians who are posting about his song. Like a lot of them live also not in small towns. And it was like a joke about a Buffalo Wild Wings. I didn't even talk about the song. And I said in the joke, I actually was like, it sucks that I can't even feel like I can't say that I just don't like this song without someone saying that I'm making a political statement. I said that. I was that explicit about it. And people still did it. Like enough people where I had to like actually stay off social media because it was just absurd. And then my email, people were like saying, like, I mean, it was like a cancellation attempt from the right. Which like I said, I've had it from both sides. So, over something as innocuous as that, because they've been set up as like this song. If you don't like this song, then you are da 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 da. When really it's like, I don't like any new country music and I don't know who he is. And I have to add to the conversation anyway. So I'm going to make a joke about what he looks like. Which people actually laughed at in the room. But then it was like, everything I'd said about how it kind of sucks how things are so polarized, everything's so political that I can't even just make this joke without it probably getting taken out of, and then that's exactly what happens.
Which I do appreciate that about comedians, good comedians, that you have the ability to take the untouchable and touch it. And I think it's helpful, even though I know it's hard for people. This is one, help me with this. This was true. I've got true for my life. I've got kids in their 20s. And there was I saw this feeling from them, kind of like the eat the rich type thing. And now it's billionaires, which wasn't even a term when I was their age, but now it's billionaires and it's down with the billionaires, Zuckerberg and Bezos and yada, yada, and they're terrible. And yet they went through a time period of being Swifties. And they're all cool with that. And then I saw her start to get talked about as the billionaire. She got put in that thing. And I need to have the conversation with my kids. I haven't. I kind of forgot about it, honestly, until reading your book. And I thought, I want to talk to them because I feel like, well, they kind of do like her, but now they feel like maybe they shouldn't because she's kind of gotten put into that. And there was a time it came up with one kid and they were trying to go, well, but she does this with her money and these guys don't. I'm going, there's no way that you can make a case for that. I don't think. But either way, it was just that I almost felt bad that they couldn't enjoy this music now because of this stance that they had taken. And again, we're really back to identity in a lot of ways. But play with that one with me. I mean,
it is very interesting, right? It really is. I think it was. Let me move so my lights will go back on.
Oh, fair.
Sorry, kind of like waddling around. So, I'm pretty sure this. I don't know if I'll get the absolute specifics correct, but I think I'm correct. So just a disclaimer there. I'm pretty sure it was Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure. But someone who I'm pretty sure is Bernie Sanders was speaking at the DNC this year and going off and off about billionaires. And then the next person who he introduced to speak was a billionaire.
Wow.
So that's what, when you box yourself into certain things, you can find that the box is a prison.
That's what's humbling to me. And I think that's why my own construct kind of broke down, because I felt like I don't know how to. And again, back to my kids, I'll see that and they want to be, down with the billionaire, down with Bezos. But man, that thing was really cheap on Amazon. I can get it tomorrow. And so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I bought that Christmas present for you on Amazon. And
yes,
we're not to just back up and go, well, then it doesn't matter. Do anything goes. No, but man, if you put yourself in a box, that's what one of your statements, and I pulled it out. You said it's rarely as simple as one team, let's call it one box, versus another. Issues are often nuanced, as you said before, nuanced, complex, and people always are. It drew me back to just, can I quit being so freaking judgmental? Mm. I judge myself sometimes and put myself in a box. Can I and give people the benefit of the doubt? And I feel like that's what you kept coming back to, story after story after story of, oh my gosh, this happened. And then to find this out about this person, that at the end of the day, nobody hates children. Nobody is not going to jump into the river to save the child. Everybody will.
Right. Yeah.
Can we come together on that and
come together over shared values and shared fears? Because often, like I said, what we really are disagreeing on is the solution to the problem and not the problem in itself. We all love our families. We all want to be happy. And I write also about environmentalism in the book, about climate change, and how you think about it, it wasn't really until fairly recently that was a political issue. And it shouldn't be a political issue where it's like one side cares about the environment, the other side cares about economic prosperity, when really we both should want both. We both should want clean air and to live in an economically prosperous society.
Yeah.
But now if you're like, hey, I don't know if this legislation is the best way to go about it, then you're like anti-environment. Or if you're like, hey, I think climate change is an issue, then you're like, okay, well then you're on that side. That's only very recent. And it's like, what could be a better example of something that affects everybody?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be this one side versus the other. That's like something we should really be able to work together on.
Another line I pulled out, Kat, is you said the more divided, tribal, and polarized we become, the more we lose. And I feel like that's hard to argue because the stats kind of show that we're losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
No, it does. There's real tangible things that we have to lose. And the people that win are the people, the government. I think it's easier to gain power. I mean, it's, of course, if you're voting not just for someone, but against evil when you go to vote, that's very motivating. Also, media. I work in media, but it's media makes money off division. So
if it bleeds, it leads.
It's profitable.
Yeah.
But the rest of us lose out on these opportunities to work together. We lose out on these relationships that could be fulfilling. We lose out on opportunities for creativity, opportunities for connection, at the expense of all these other people who gain.
Tell me about, or give me your thoughts. I have been playing with identity.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to threat, looking at that. Why are we so threatened, and what we associate with? Another way I'm looking at it is what we identify with. Now, the word I feel like has baggage because these days, that word's come to light so much more than I've ever seen it with how you identify gender wise.
Right.
That is a way to identify, but I'm looking at that in a bigger way of, gosh, I choose how I identify. I have the ability to choose, if I don't just let it kind of happen to me, how I identify with everything. And it directs all that I do and what I am, what I could be threatened by or not. And it feels like people are so looking for, again, that conclusive, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, end of story. There's the box. As you said, there's the team. And it just has me questioning identity. And how we identify and wanting it to not be fixed and to be more fluid. And yet even saying that, I've watched people bristle, especially some of the religious, folks, to say I look at identity as fluid and not fixed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, but I do too. I've had that too with, even I say like how binary thinking divides us. The word binary, people are like, oh, it's very similar to the word identity. But I think that just viewing people as individuals, and I also think that like just being open, being curious. When I'm wrong, like when I've been wrong, which of course everyone's been wrong, it's not the worst thing ever to be wrong. I know people feel like it is, but it's actually kind of awesome to be wrong, because if you realize you're wrong, then you've learned something, To think that I'm 36 years old and I'm never going to be wrong again, that means that like I'm not going to learn anything until I die, which is hopefully quite some time from now. That's what a boring way to live. And what a more exciting way to live than to be like, okay, I'm going into this and with the thought that I could be. Otherwise, you're just going to see what you want to see. And you're not going to be able to grow, because that's really what it is it's growth.
Agreed. There's I think it was Anthony DeMello, a philosopher I read a lot of, and he talked about this shaman or something, 90-year-old guy, and he comes in and this younger guy says, proselyte says something, and he goes, and the 90-year-old goes, wow, I've been wrong all this time. I'm so excited. Thanks for the new information. And it hit me, obviously, I've talked about it so many times. It hit me because I thought, I want to be that guy, and I haven't been. But to be able to say, do I want to learn and grow, or do I just want to sit in my box of thinking I'm right?
Yeah. And it's more comfortable there.
Yeah.
But it's boring.
Okay, go to, you said something on politics, and you said the system is broken. And it just, again, that hit me hard because of my own, I feel like that I work a lot in healthcare. And I said, the system as it is broken. We're trying to make things better, but the system is just a catastrophe. And for you to say politics is, I think it's helpful for people to look at and go, it is a broken system. It does require us to take sides, make a law, and, put it in a box. And we're broken to begin with. That should, I guess back to your thing, there's a commonality we can all share. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should, it's, I think that I've often, I write about this too, had an easier time talking to people who are like really left wing, sometimes in a party line Democrat, for example, because it's like, at least you agree with me that the system's broken. Yeah. And, we would have literally opposite views of how to solve that, but at least we can agree on the same problem. So I think that there's a huge advantage to just saying, listen, like, look at, like, we can agree this is fucked, right? Like, there's been so many of those moments. I think the debate was one of them between Trump and Biden, the final debate, where it's like, guys, like, this is fucked. And I think that was actually a moment where pretty much everyone was saying, like, yeah, like, this is fucked. Like, this is not what should be happening. Yeah. Without saying, but so-and-so is worse, so-and-so is worse, like, just for a second. I feel like there can be so much to be gained from moments like that, where you can admit that, like, I might have a different view of what should happen, but we can at least agree that what's happening right here on my TV is not what should be happening. Like, this is not
This is a
normal.
kindergarten fight. Yeah.
Like, this is not,
Yeah.
this is not, we gotta be able to do better than this, right?
I think kind of back to the nobody hates kids and wants them to die.
Right.
I totally agree. Here's my last question for you, Kat. And some of this comes, especially I intimidated myself a little bit on having you on the show because I look at you as somebody who is so exposed to so much, so many of the issues. You're so well informed. I don't feel as informed. So I'm going to ask a question and try to have it not be making myself feel better about it. But it's a legit question of it feels like there's a pressure. I see it with my kids even more so than myself. There's pressure to be informed, to have pretty deep knowledge on all the issues, everything that's talked about in the presidential debate or whatever, but all the issues, to be informed and have a rock solid, in-depth, position on it. And I'm looking at it going, how do you even have time? I don't want it to be a cop out, but then when I look at the experts that I turn to, because I questioned some of them, a lot of them have said, man, I really know about my area really well. I don't know about the others. And so I've got people I turn to and trust and look to them, but they said, it's taken most of my time to know my area and be able to impart that to folks. So it feels like I'm trying to hold that because I don't want to just say, well, I just don't have to know about that. I don't want it to be a cop out. But again, feeling like there's this pressure to have really in-depth insight and have a firm stance on everything. It doesn't feel tenable, but I want your thoughts.
Well, it's really not. I mean, there's things that I think I know more about than other things. And then also things are so constantly changing. I know that I have a core set of principles that I stick to that often can guide me in terms of what I'm likely to think about something. But I also think it's okay to say that you don't know. I think it's okay it's better to be in an argument with someone or a discussion and to say, and I've said this, I am not familiar with that legislation. I didn't know so-and-so said that. Then like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so said that. It's like, because you just want to be right over everything else. It's actually, there's a lot of power in being like, actually, I haven't heard that. Maybe you're right. I'll look into it. I think that's something that more people should do because it's not possible to be an expert on everything. I made a joke on the show not too long ago being like, well, I'm on cable news, so I know it's far more important for me to have a strong opinion than it is for me to understand what I'm talking about. And I said that. And I said, however, and then I gave a nuanced opinion and I gave a kind of a nuanced opinion on it. And then the host of the show made a joke like, all right, so and he boiled it down to like 4 words. Cause there's a self-awareness about that, right? Where it's like, sorry, I actually don't have like not everybody could all the time.
Agreed. And I have experience in saying that, like, man, I just don't know, somebody judging and going, well, you suck for not caring enough to know.
But it's there's plenty of you can't know about everything.
Yeah. Kat, thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed the book and your perspective. And it was, honestly, you're outside of my norm of my box. Yeah. And even that was part of my own, you're helping me. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
I'll make my last podcast interview before I give birth because I'm like ready.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take that. The last one before she officially birthed the human. Yes. Congratulations. I hope it's just a blessed event for you.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Kat. Well, friends, again, that is Kat, K-A-T, Timpf, T-I-M-P-F. You can find her on Fox News. Type that name in. You'll find her everywhere. The book that, again, was my muse here is I Used to Like You Until ... How Binary Thinking Divides Us. Got a question or a comment for me on this? Find me at kevinmiller.co. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further, and most of all, enjoy the ride.
Yeah,